Today's edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron delivers fresh ingredients and recipes to your door so you can cook something new and interesting tonight. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by visiting blueapron.com/MacVoices. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And by ScreenCastsOnline, your source for new Mac and iOS tutorials every week. To learn more and for a 14-day free trial, visit ScreenCastsOnline.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm happy to welcome for the first time Chris Bobotis of Mettle here to talk about his Skybox software and 360 video editing. Chris, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, a lot of folks are going to say, why are we talking about 360 editing? Well, at CES, I saw a lot of 360 cameras. I think a lot of us are starting to appreciate some of the value in 360, and we might even be interested in producing a little bit of it. So when I had a chance to get you on the show, I was kind of anxious to talk to you about it. We've talked about 360 editing and virtual reality editing a little bit on the show, but this is something new, and I'm looking forward to learning about it and what it can do for me and the products I can deliver.
Sure. Happy to help any way I can.
Great. So take me through Skybox. What is it and what all does it offer?
Sure. So maybe a bit of history. So we come from content creation. We ran Mettle as a production and a creative boutique for quite a long time. And since 92, actually. So in the mid-90s, we started to create proprietary tools for ourselves, specifically for After Effects. We've been an After Effects shop from the get-go. We've always liked Adobe products very, very much. Our primary clientele came from advertising agency work because we come from advertising ourselves. So I was a creative director. My partner Nancy was a creative director as well, and we started Mettle to become a facilitator and a creative resource for these agencies, right? So we started to develop tools because, desktop solutions are wonderful. They're amazing at a lot of things, and they lack in certain areas. So we started to create a couple of tools that gave us a bit of a competitive edge and filled in some holes that we thought were there in After Effects. Round about 2010, Adobe approached us and asked us if we would like to be bundled with After Effects. We were bundled for a couple of years with one of our first products. That encouraged us, and we started to create more products specifically for the GPU. So we've been creating products for the GPU in a very, very professional capacity since 2008. So we understand the GPU very, very, very well. About a year and a half ago, one of our customers approached us and asked us, still agency, right? So we're still a service business, part service, part product, right? One of the agencies approached us and asked us to put together a 360 project, and we had no knowledge whatsoever. We've done workflow, we've done IMAX workflow, we've done every workflow you can possibly think of, right? One of the first to tackle these kind of things. So the client was very, very comfortable with having us help them out with the 360 thing because it was very new to them as well. So now to situate you a bit, Chuck, this is post Oculus Rift acquisition by Facebook. Right? So these are huge milestones. This is about what they call the DK2 era. So DK2 is the Developer Kit 2. That's right before they launched with what they're calling now the CV1. Okay. So all this to say, we thought the project was headed to HMD, with the head-mounted displays, the Rifts. We thought that was the target. We were under NDA. The customer couldn't really disclose. We get to the end of so let me backtrack a bit. So there were no solutions to create 360 at that time for Adobe, at least. I can't speak for anywhere else in the ecosystem, but for Adobe, what we knew well, there was nothing really that could do 360, at least the way we wanted it to do. So we were much into cinematic and narrative. We come from a storytelling world, right? So, the project did not call for an experiential experience. It wasn't just grab a 360 camera, stick it in the middle of somewhere, and there's your 360 experience. It really called for us to tell a story. So we built a tool set. We actually DIY'd it to deliver on that project. And at the end of the project, the customer disclosed that they were deploying to YouTube because YouTube was supporting 360. That's when I turned to my partner, Nancy, and I said, okay, this is the opportunity to become a product company if we so choose. So we did. We actually stopped the whole service component of our business and dedicated all our resources to creating the tool set that you will see today. So that's a bit of background.
That's great background. That takes a lot of courage, I would think, because at least you had your toe dipped in the in the software side. But boy, that's a radical change.
No doubt, Chuck. So, I mean, I guess you've been involved in the service side of things, and you know that even 6 months away from your client base, they tend to forget you very quickly. So you're very right about that. It was a huge leap of faith, and there's no doubt that we were nervous at the outset because the amount of money investment and sort of pulling out of a wonderful revenue source and taking a chance like this was tremendous. But about six weeks in, we're very happy, Chuck. We never look back, and we actually can't keep up at this point. It's just insane. So
I guess that's good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
So we're quite pleased.
Well, you may have already answered one of my first questions, but which would have been why Adobe and why the Adobe side as opposed to the Final Cut side. But it sounds like you were very familiar with Adobe. You had the relationships in place. It just made sense that that's where you would start.
No doubt. And I think even more importantly, we knew and understood the software very, very well. We have an intimate knowledge, right? We've sort of grown with it as a company as well. So think 1992. Is the first time we started working with After Effects. That's version 2.0, basically, right? I actually was working with version 1 as well, but not in a professional capacity, right? So part and parcel of that is you get to really understand the community, right? And we were very well entrenched because our other products were well received. So as a good example of that, and to lead up to maybe the Final Cut Pro answer, right? Part of the reason that we haven't ported the Final Cut Pro and I'll backtrack to Premiere Pro for a second. So even with Premiere Pro, we were not reluctant. We knew that we did want to port to Premiere Pro, but we didn't know that community very well. We've been working with Premiere Pro since version 1, but the fact of the matter is our world was a 30-second or 60-second world, at most maybe 2-minute world insofar as our deliverables were concerned. So for a 30-second spot or a 60-second spot or even like a title sequence, After Effects is more than enough. So although we knew Premiere Pro very well at the outset, we sort of lived in After Effects, ate and breathed After Effects for decades, right? So when we launched Premiere Pro, we went with very soft launches. The last thing we wanted to do is walk in there and cause more damage than good because we just didn't feel that we knew that market well enough, right? Okay. So a long way of answering your question, but Final Cut Pro is kind of like that. The two reasons why we haven't moved that way is, well, 3 reasons. We're so busy with the Adobe ecosystem right now, we can't keep up. So, I mean, we're already up to 6 products. We have an aggressive roadmap moving forward towards NAB and even SIGGRAPH this year, where we're hoping to double that by that time. So I think it makes more sense for us to sort of build as rich an offering as we possibly can within one ecosystem, because this is all organic growth. This is a very small company. There's no seed financing. There's no fancy venture capitalists here. There's nothing like that. This is glorified, but mom and pop, on steroids, basically, right? And we like to keep it that way because we can make decisions and we know the repercussions of these decisions, right? So until it gets extremely painful, we plan to stay very organic and grow at the right pace and just really put the money back into the product offerings, not look at servicing debt. So Final Cut Pro, 3 reasons to try to keep this short. 1, we don't feel we know that market well enough. 2, the Mac drivers are not at par for GPUs are not at par with Windows. Performance-wise, Windows kicks the Mac's butt. I'm sorry, don't mean to offend anybody. I'm a huge Mac fan. I love the UX. Windows, even today, Windows 10 is still not where Mac was even 10 years ago. Sorry. So there's you go. There's your Mac fanboy. But yeah, I mean, when you've got looming deadlines, and budgets may change, but deadlines don't, especially in our business, right? So you want to know that you can deliver. So we're hoping that things improve on the Mac side. We certainly port to Mac and Windows on the Adobe offerings, right? But Final Cut Pro, market, understanding of the market, to us, lackluster performance on the Mac side. We understand the value of building a brand. We've helped build so many brands through our career, through advertising, right? So I don't want to put out, and Nancy doesn't, we don't want to put out an offering that is lackluster on the Final Cut Pro side and sort of mar or compromise that brand that we've worked so hard to build. Fair enough?
Oh, absolutely. I first of all, I really respect the fact that you are sticking to your, to what you know, because you are focused on quality software. That's great. The other thing that is always interesting to me, we pop up a website, we start looking at a product like this, and you think there must be a 40, 50, 100, 200 person team behind this. And then I get them on the show and you find out it's 2, 3, 5 people maybe that are doing some of this amazingly creative stuff. And that means that your reach can only go so far, especially if you are focused on quality and not just trying to rake in every market. So yeah, makes perfect sense.
I think part of it is that, we do come from advertising, right? So we certainly understand how to market. I mean, no one really knows how to market, especially in this day and age, truth be told, because things change so much, right? Yeah. On even on a monthly basis. But we're small enough to be reactive, right? We're lean enough to be able to really optimize any investment we're throwing back into the company. So, 14 months ago, we started off as 4 people in this venture. We're now up to 12. In the span of 14 months. But, it's been, engineering has scaled up beautifully, marketing starting to scale up beautifully. So things are sort of falling into place, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah. You love to hear these success stories of someone who takes a chance like you did, makes a decision, and then it works out for them. That's fantastic.
Well, I think when it's really like one of the things, and I don't mean to criticize anybody, but when it's really your money at stake and not some venture capitalists, you take it a lot more seriously, right? Yeah. And it's your dime, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Somebody might completely disagree with me, but it's working for us.
That's as good a testimony as you can get.
You bet. Yeah.
Before we get into the product, let me ask you this. Who is this for? And what I mean by that is this for someone who's out there trying to do a commercially viable 360 project, or is it someone who's maybe just getting into 360 with something like a Theta camera?
I think we run the gamut. So if I think one thing I'll try to impress, and if I can leave you with anything about Mettle, is our company is, if you have even half an hour and you're interested, don't go anywhere on our website. Just go to our blog. You will be blown away by high production value projects from our customers, of course, right? Through to very indie, no budget productions. So, our software runs the gamut. And at the end of the day, it's really not about our software, Chuck. It's really about what the customers do with the software. That's way more important, right? I think we're there to facilitate once again, right?
Absolutely. But I also, let's be fair. I think there are learning curves associated with a lot of this stuff, and that's why I always like to put a kind of a frame around it. That if I'm if I have a Theta and I want to start playing with this, this is a product I should look at.
Absolutely. We've seen two sides of the coin, right? One is people that are extremely comfortable in acquisition in 360. So they've got a camera rig, they've got a Theta, they've got a Gear 360 or a very, very fancy 18 camera array, whatever it is, right? Because to us, it doesn't really matter. What you shoot with is not important. We don't get involved in stitching. We're all about editing and post-production and storytelling. Right? So the deliverable, basically, that's been standardized already in the industry in what they call an equirectangular source, right? So that's what we're expecting so you've done your stitching, you've done your acquisition, and now you're ready to start cutting, doing transitions, the usual. And everything that we've done for flat cinema, we facilitated for 360. So back to that analogy of both sides of the coin. So we have people that are very comfortable in acquisition, but have never used an editing software in their life, right? But here you are introducing them to Premiere Pro, and within half an hour, they're rocking and rolling. It's not that complicated, right? Then the other side of the coin is people who are very, very well versed, and this is what we tapped into, I think, and part of a big reason for the success. So people that are extremely well versed in NLEs and animation packages and VFX packages like After Effects, but have very little knowledge of acquisition, right? Well, that's okay, because we'll help them in that transition as well, and we'll make suggestions like, hey, don't start with this crazy array. Go buy yourself something like a Theta. Go buy yourself a Gear 360, which is self-stitches. It's good enough. I mean, at the end of the day, your real concern is about storytelling. It's not so much about acquisition. You just need footage to play with, right? Especially as a storyteller. So we've seen both sides, and they both segued very, very comfortably with our tool set because we do not introduce any new UX or UI unless there's a compelling reason, Chuck, right? So if you're comfortable with Premiere Pro already, you can use our tools within minutes. And that's no joke. You'll see that in the next little while. If you're comfortable in After Effects, you're producing. I did one thing which I think was amazing with Nancy is that early on, we decided to open up our Skype channel every morning from 7 till about 12 o'clock, every single day. And it was sort of first come, first serve. So this is because we were so well entrenched in the industry and in the medium, right, that we saw there was a bit of a panic going on. People were starting to get work and they just didn't know how to deal with it. So I would sit down and give these like pseudo demos, but at the end of the day, within 5 minutes, people were comfortable. They'd see certain features and basically tell me to shut up. Where do I buy? Right? And then I think more importantly is that they felt there was a support mechanism in play. Do you know what I mean? So they weren't being thrown to the wolves. And I think the last and most important point is, and I'm not joking about this, I saw people that were very new to 360 going through the motions with me in the morning, right, getting this kind of briefing and understanding, and then the very next day they were deploying to YouTube. That was unheard of for people, right? Yeah. And I think that was a big part of our strategy as well. And, we will not take credit for this, for the following, Chuck, but I can say that we chose to democratize early on and make it as easy and accessible as possible because we like the medium. We found it very challenging, right? Truth be told, if you spoke to me about 3 years ago, I was pretty jaded. I had seen everything there is to see in this industry, right? But then all of a sudden, 360 comes around and I realize I know nothing. And that's exciting. That was amazing, right? So I think it's the same thing that people are seeing when they first look at the medium. There may be like some, hesitation at the outset. There may be some concern, but then as soon as they start playing, as soon as they grab that Theta and they go outside and they get their feet wet and they shoot a couple of shots and they start cutting it together, then they get excited, right? So the motivation was, if we become as transparent as possible and as accessible as possible, then the medium through indies, right? Because they'll move faster than the big shops. The medium will have a chance to survive and thrive. And that's what's happened over the past 14 months. That's why I go back to our blog. What Nancy, who's primarily responsible for that blog, Nancy and her team have done an unbelievable job of curating 14 months worth of this. It'll blow your mind, Chuck. Take the half hour and spend some time there. It's something else, because the customers are not there to sell their product. They're there to talk about their workflow, where they stumbled, where they fell, how they got back up, what did they shoot with, how did they tell their story in 360 space. So the community is unbelievable. As giving as we've been, the ROI, as far as we're concerned, has been immeasurable, Chuck, in that regard, right? So there you go.
Yeah, I love all this because, first of all, you've created the community that is so important in today's world. You're educating people, and I think you're right. In the last 14 months, maybe give or take a few months, a lot of us are starting to appreciate maybe what can be done with 360. That it's not just I don't want to criticize any of the past fads, if you will.
Yep.
But this and you use the magic word. This is just another tool in the storytelling toolkit.
It's exactly it.
So it may give you a different slant. You may be able to tell stories you couldn't tell any other way, or in a way that you never could before. So I think it is an exciting time if you're interested in getting into this.
Well, I think one of the, the blockbusters aside, which are necessary, of course, right, to have a medium move forward. I'm talking about revenue models, monetization. That aside, if some of our proudest points have been some projects that we've seen where the medium has actually helped affect social change, and it's incredible, actually. I mean, we were fortunate enough to have some amazing customers, including a couple of guys from Fugitives Creative. So they were given a mandate to help with mental health issues at a very, very important level, meaning the money level, right? So they were asked to put together a piece that basically helped delegates and people that control money around the world understand how important mental health is to us as a society, right? And how we shouldn't be giving up on these, in financial terms, let's call them these incredible assets, right? These people that have contributed and done amazing things for you in your community, and all of a sudden, mental health gets in the way, and there's no mechanisms in place to help them to pull these people out, especially in third world countries. So there's one story that really touched my heart. It was incredible. It's called Francis. They chose 360 because of that, because you can really put the person in situ. You can really start to understand what this person felt like, right? Because of the medium. So the way they presented it was, I think, a couple of hundred delegates that they were presenting it to, and they actually had everybody wear the Samsung Gear VR, the Samsung equivalent, right, with the mobile devices. So the delegates walked away with the right action items, which is very, very important, right? Sundance caught wind of this, as I understood the story, because they were ready to deploy on a massive scale. Sundance caught wind of this and said, why don't you hold off? Why don't we premiere at Sundance, and we'll just be able to leverage a story and have it sort of get to the masses in the right way, right? So here you go, a medium actually making a huge difference like that. That's incredible. That's something else. Yeah. So, as I said, the monetization models, they'll either work themselves out or they will not, right? That's not something that we can control. But as content creators, especially in areas like this, it's incredible. Another great story is, and I think a good indicator of what kind of momentum we've seen. So are you familiar with VRLA? That's Virtual Reality LA. It started up as a very, very small meetup in Los Angeles and escalated to over 10,000 attendees in a matter of less than 2 years. That's unbelievable. So we were at VRLA, and we've done a couple of them already. We were in VRLA. It's a bit of a blur, Chuck, because I think I've navigated the globe at least 3 times last year with all our travels. So VRLA in Los Angeles. Apologies if I don't get it right, but I'm thinking late 2015, early 2016. I'm sitting there doing my booth thing, talking to people, getting great reception. Somebody from the medical community comes up to me and says, we're a doctor, right? A bunch of PhDs are sitting down. They said, we've got money. We like this medium. let's just brainstorm. What would you like to see happen on the medical side of things? Because they're just looking for ideas, right, to implement now. They've got the money. They like the medium. What do we do with this now? So I turned to them and I said, well, what about chronic pain? And I have some firsthand experience with that. I mean, if you don't have access to drugs when you're going through chronic pain, one of the biggest and most powerful things is distraction, right? So this gentleman's eyes just lit up and it clicked right away. I mean, you're not looking to get people completely off of drugs with chronic pain, but if you can get them off for 2 or 3 hours a day, or even 1 hour a day, that's incredible. So I'm thinking, the gentleman walks away. I'm thinking, well, this is something that won't see the light of day for another couple of years, right? 4 months later, the program was in play.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. So, I mean, I'm seeing, I can go on and on and on about stories like this. So again, let's forget the big blockbusters for a second, and let's look at human scale, basically. And this is incredible. It's just an incredible medium. So we're motivated, right?
Today's edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Blue Apron. You can cook something new and interesting tonight when you visit blueapron.com/MacVoices. They provide the ingredients and recipes. You have the satisfaction of preparing and enjoying it. A true win-win situation. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. I've been telling you about Blue Apron, about how easy it is to get fresh ingredients delivered right to your door, about the terrific recipes that are not only delicious, but also help you expand your culinary horizons, both from a cooking and an eating perspective. Now, though, I think it's time to show you what the Blue Apron experience looks like by opening one of my very own Blue Apron orders for you. When your Blue Apron box arrives, you may have some idea of what to expect if you check the website, but I think it's more fun just to open it and discover what you're going to have. First, you will see the recipes and some additional information on top. Take a second to see what you'll be enjoying for dinner in the coming days. Be inspired by the photos, maybe browse the ingredients and preparation instructions, and start to get hungry. Next, open the insulated bag and start unpacking the fruits, vegetables, spices, and other ingredients that don't require refrigeration. You'll notice that some are shrink-wrapped so they can't be damaged or break, where others are whole, just like you brought them home from the supermarket. Except there is no supermarket. You'll also notice that there's no waste here. Blue Apron sends you exactly what you need and only what you need, so you don't have anything extra to throw away. Then there are the knickknacks, items that are specific to each recipe, all bundled up separately so you will know exactly what is what when cooking time comes. You pretty much don't need to label an onion, but some ingredients might not be quite as obvious to you. Blue Apron knows that and makes sure that you can't be confused or make a mistake. Next, remove the cardboard divider, and you'll find the top section of the refrigerated area. My Blue Apron order usually arrives at my office, and I'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. So I usually have to wait until the evening to unpack my box. And not only haven't I found the ice packs melted, I haven't even found them mushy. The food is always frozen solid and cold. Between the insulated bags and the ice packs, freshness is simply not an issue. Unpacking the pork, shrimp, beef, chicken, whatever this particular box holds is the last step. The fresh veggies and fruits go into the crisper in the refrigerator, the meat goes into the freezer, and I'm ready to decide which dish I'm going to make for dinner tonight. So that's the Blue Apron unboxing experience. Sort of like a culinary Christmas each time an order arrives. There's a lot more to tell you about Blue Apron, but for now, why not try Blue Apron for yourself? Blue Apron is so serious about you giving them a try, they'll send you 3 free meals, including free delivery, if you visit blueapron.com/MacVoices. Fill out some delivery information, and your first Blue Apron order will be on its way to you so you can do your own unboxing. If you do, send me pictures and let me know how you liked it, because I know you're going to like it. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. blueapron.com/MacVoices for 3 free meals and free delivery right to your door. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Thanks to Blue Apron for their support of MacVoices. Chris, you're not enthusiastic about this at all.
Oh, no. No.
Well, let's take a look at some of this, because I'm anxious to see. I have very, very limited experience in
Sure.
any 360 work, and I'm anxious to see what it looks like and how you go about achieving some of the results that you're getting.
Sure, be my pleasure.
Before we do, let's just say it right up front. Chris is going to be demonstrating this on a Windows box because that's the way we are set up today. So that's the only reason. But is it fair to say, Chris, and don't let me put words in your mouth, that it works equally well on a Mac? We're just happen to be using it on Windows?
There is no doubt that it works well on the Mac. The only thing you're getting on Windows right now is better performance. That's it. Okay. So we're all GPU. All our products are written to OpenGL, OpenCL, and CUDA. So regardless of which GPU you're using, it will work well. There is a CPU fallback, but we all know that CPU is slower than GPU, right? But yeah, I think you're just getting faster, more performance. There's no new, better feature sets from one platform to the other. They have to be at par, right? Yeah. You can't start on one product on one platform and then all of a sudden pixels get better on another and then try to right? No. So they're quality-wise, everything's at par. It's just speed. That's all it is.
Okay. All right. With that, let's take a look.
Great.
Chris, take it away.
Yep. So we're in Premiere Pro right now, and we talked about this weird thing called an equirectangular format that I call the standard, that the medium is already starting to call a standard. And that's basically what you're seeing here in the middle. This young lady sitting in the car, and the car looks all deformed, right? That basically, when you put on an HMD, or if your HMD is the head-mounted display, like the Oculus Rift or the Vive or the Gear VR, right? When you're looking inside the Vive or in a browser or on your mobile device, what you're basically seeing is this field of view, right? So you see that on the right here, you've got a more appropriate view of the car, right? The girl in the car. So on the left is the equirectangular format. On the right is what you would see in your HMD or in a browser. Cool?
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yep. So now let's start. So what I'm playing around with here right now is what we call our VR player. I'll come back to that, okay? So even before our tools with Premiere Pro, what we worked very closely with Adobe, and they asked us, what makes sense for a host to be doing, and what should you guys be doing as third-party developers? So I said, I think what would make a lot of sense, and we work closely with them to do that, is that if you could very quickly, as a Premiere Pro user, get this view that we're seeing here on the right in line, right? So instead of looking at this equirectangular footage, which is very intimidating for a lot of people at the outset, why don't we introduce a VR view, right? So that's this little button here that they introduced in Premiere Pro. So if I toggle that on, I'm getting almost what we have over here with our VR player, right? Okay. So for people that are not quite ready to commit to tool sets, but just want to start cutting, you can certainly do it with Premiere Pro on its own. There's no, unless you see compelling reasons, which I'm going to demonstrate in the next little while, you don't even need to buy plugins yet to start working, which is great, right? So let's toggle. So you saw that you just toggle this little new icon that I introduced, and basically your equirectangular becomes a rectilinear view or a flat view. Right?
Makes sense.
So now we'll toggle back to equirectangular, and what we're finding a lot of people doing is their workflow looks a lot like this. They like to keep that equirectangular view, and you'll see why in the next little while, because you sort of get a global perspective of where things are, in where your assets are in this project versus what you will see as the net result once you get it onto YouTube, Facebook, or into the Oculus Rift, into an HMD environment, right? So I find people are working like this a lot. So there's still a great benefit to running our player. So our VR player is natively supported. With the Rift is natively supported, the Oculus Rift. It'll run full 4K resolution on qualified systems, and we'll talk about qualified systems later on. at up to 90 frames a second without a problem. All the code has been ported to OpenGL, OpenCL, and CUDA. Eventually, it'll make it into Apple's Mettle and probably Vulkan, which is another GPU language that's on the horizon. So this is certainly invaluable, right? To be able to view the net result of anything that you're doing. In 360 space in a browser paradigm. So I don't have my Oculus Rift hooked up here to this, but if we did, you would have an option to toggle to a Rift view, and that would feed this image directly into your Oculus Rift.
Okay.
Is that clear? Clear enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes perfect sense.
So if I can ask you to just imagine that you're wearing your Oculus Rift right now and that you're watching this view, right? So if you would turn your head left or right, up or down, you'd see exactly what I'm seeing right here when I'm playing with the mouse, right? So one of the things we decided to introduce in the VR player, which we thought was very important for HMD type work, right, or head-mounted display type work, is we definitely show mono or stereo, but we also introduced a workspace mode. So as I said, if you can imagine for a second you're still wearing this HMD, you would actually still see the whole of the Premiere Pro interface, and you can continue to work. So that's important because you can make editing and design decisions in context. You can grade, right? And we even introduced, I'm going to press a keyboard right now. We even introduced, I'm going to show it to you here, down here, sorry. If you were wearing an HMD, this would be a lot easier, of course, but there, we'll get there. Sorry, I'm being spazzy. Here, I'll just, okay, so what we introduced is a keyboard. You actually get a virtual keyboard too. So you can see I'm just hitting keys and it's just working basically. Right. The idea is that say for example you went through this whole process and you've got a day under your belt where you've edited everything, but you've been looking primarily at flat images, right? Rectilinear images. Then you go in and you're looking at a 360 rendition. You play it back. You don't have to render out because everything's real time here. But you realize that maybe, cut number 4 is a little abrupt. Maybe the transition in between 9 and 11 can use a little love, and maybe the text is not exactly where you thought it'd be because a rectilinear rendition is not quite showing you what you want it to be, right? Well, the nice thing about toggling over to 360 mode is that you don't have to take that HMD on and try to remember what it is exactly that you didn't like. You can actually refine and tweak things in context. So even if you're spending another 10, 15 minutes with that HMD on, it's just completely invaluable because of that workspace mode.
I love that because you're right. For those of us that are inexperienced with this suddenly makes it a bit more approachable.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if you were in everybody else's shoes, let's say even 14, 16 months ago, the process was create with no real tools, render out, upload to YouTube, view it, realize that you've made 40 mistakes, and you've got to start this process all over again. Right. Whereas now, the hardware is matured enough. The hardware vendors are certainly motivated. They've introduced some incredible things even in the span of like 9 months. So the cards are way better. You don't have to render out anymore. The time saving is incredible. So it's really about empowering the storyteller, right? Being disruptive with these renders and uploads. I mean, it just breaks creativity. It breaks the flow. Whereas here, you're creating on the fly now in less than 14 months. So the truth be told, we've had this actually within, from the time we started, within 4 to 5 months. We were working in real time. So from a content creator standpoint, that's unbelievable. You can iterate more, if nothing else, right? Budgets don't change. Deadlines don't change, as we said, right? But if you can iterate just a few more, then all of a sudden you're telling that much better of a story.
Right. And since this is such a new medium, you want to experiment a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, accessible software, I'll show you that it's, as I said, if you understand the Premiere Pro UX, there's very few new notions that we introduce, right? I've already introduced probably one of the most complex notion, and I didn't hear you fall off your chair.
No,
Right.
no, because again, it makes sense to be able to do this way, especially since in this workspace view, I'm looking at both representations. I sort of know what I have to work with, but I also see what it is that I'm presenting.
Absolutely. So one of the first things we did, actually, let's I guess show a very good example of what the results of what would happen if you try to introduce some text or a logo here without specialized tools. Okay. So let's pretend our plugins or anybody else's plugins do not exist. What would happen if your customer came in and said, "Hey, I'd like a logo in there"? So I've gone ahead and actually imported a Bridgestone logo here, and I'll just throw it over the timeline. Backtrack a bit here. So I've got this logo here, this B logo that's the Bridgestone logo, right? So now if I look at it in context, on the left-hand side, everything looks fine. That logo looks like it's sitting nicely, maybe a little big and gaudy, but that's okay. I mean, maybe that's the way the customer wants it, right? So we're good on the left, and we look at it here in context, and it's okay. I mean, there's just a little bit of distortion that's happening here, right? But hey, you know what? Stylistically, somebody may even like that, thinking that, this projection, because that's exactly what's happening right now, this flat asset is actually being projected inside of a sphere, right? So this kind of a projection may even be aesthetically pleasing to some people, and that's okay, nothing wrong with that. But then what if that customer asked us to go ahead and move that logo further down, right? We don't want a dead center. We want that logo over that Audi symbol, for example, right? So now we're in Premiere Pro, and we're just going to grab the positional tools and just move it down, right? So on the left-hand side, all seems fine, no real problems, no real headaches, right? Until we look at it in spherical. Now all of a sudden you're getting this deformation, this pinching that is really not acceptable no matter which way you look at it, right? Unless you're into that kind of thing. But so, and we can go ahead and scale that too, right? So there's certainly things that you can do in here, and I'll just try to move it a little further down, right? And let's see what that looks like. But it's just like pinching and getting ridiculous and gnarly for no good reason, right? Especially if I surpass. See what happens here. You see, I'm going below that pole, that south pole here, right? You see, it's going to get gnarled and clipped off and get all weird.
Don't even know what it is anymore.
Exactly. So this is where one of our tools comes in handy. And this is one of the only new notions that we've introduced in UX. Okay, so now we understand that we've got X, Y position tools. In spherical, we definitely need a Z as well to reposition things. And we need for the software to do some, I won't call it magic, but just some resolving. You'll just need to resolve certain deformations to make it work properly in here. So if we go under the video effects menu and look for Mettle, one of the first products that we introduced for Premiere Pro is called 360 VR Tools. So one of the tool sets is what we call Project 2D. Now, all I do, like anything else in Premiere Pro, as an effect, I just drag and drop it right over that video track, right? So now you'll notice that there's this sort of reverse deformation that happened, right? It's not straight anymore. And here, I'll just toggle it on and off for you so you can see. Straight, kind of warped, right? The reason for that is that if we look at it in context, it's sort of doing a reverse deformation so that everything looks nice and straight. You see those edges?
Yeah. The way
there's no deformation anymore. And I'll just scale it back for you. So what did we introduce here? We introduced the Z scale, right? So you can actually do some kind of a pseudo Z move here. We've got what used to be known as sort of like a DVE move, right? So you've got some pseudo 3D, 2.5D going on here. So that's wonderful, right? And it'll still always resolve properly. It'll just look the part when you look at it in context. And then even more importantly than that is repositioning tools. Remember what happened when we threw it down to what they call the nadir, right, or the south pole of the spherical data. Let's grab a tool. So now instead of using X, Y, we're going to be repositioning using X, Y, and Z. So if we grab the X tool and throw it down here, you see the deformation that's happening there, Chuck?
Completely, yeah.
Right? So the result of that, sorry, I'm just going to pull this back in focus. The result of that is that that asset looks nice and straight in the way we expect it to be in context. Cool?
And you can't really do both at the same time.
What do you mean?
Well, in other words, to have it look the way it does in the viewer, it almost has to look to be properly represented. It has to look deformed, just like the car does in the timeline view.
Yeah. So if we scrub forward, remember this rendition with the girl inside the car, right? So to understand this a little bit better, the idea here is that if you're think of a spherical globe, like a map that you'd have in your house, for example, maybe in a study, right? So if we take that sphere and unwrap it and lay it flat, you would get what we know today as a map. Like, this is one of the reasons that we look at equatorial maps and we think that Alaska is massive, right, when we're looking at it flat, because actually when you grab that and wrap it back over a sphere, Alaska deforms back to its natural state, which is a lot smaller than we think, right? So this is the phenomenon that we're looking at here. So if we look at the leftmost side, look at all this deformation that's happening here, right? Whereas when it's projected back onto a sphere, this chair looks normal, right? That side of the car looks normal. It doesn't look like this madness that we see here in the equirectangular space, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, at least in our experience. This is the biggest hurdle, is once people start to understand exactly what this equirectangular asset or this format and the reason why it's like that, then everything gets a lot easier for them, right?
I think you're right. I think the timeline version is the thing that, okay, and I'm one of them. Okay, I've got this loaded in. Now what do I do with it? What can I do with it? I mean, I've got this weird looking thing, and it's captured 360, or as much as it is, and now what do I do with it to make it compelling? I mean, sure, you can flatten it back out to some degree and treat it traditionally, but that's not why we're here.
No, absolutely. So, adding assets like text or supers, or you can even take like a 16:9 footage and treat it like a picture-in-picture where it's inset properly in this spherical world. So in essence, it would look like a floating screen, right? But it would be resolved properly, so it would look like a nice flat floating screen in the spherical space. So back to the tools for a second. Why did we even go through the trouble of introducing, I'm just going to reset some of this stuff. Why did we go through the trouble of even introducing a Z space right here and having these DVE moves? I'll tell you why, Chuck, is that we first launched for After Effects, right? Our first product was actually for After Effects. And as we were watching the market grow, After Effects artists were completely inundated with work in this space. It was just insane. So, we're looking at this, and, we know for a fact that a lot of the stuff like this could easily be done in an NLE, right? So if you had an editing partner, you can offload a lot of this very simple work to your editor. Or for that matter, After Effects until this year was a lot slower than Premiere Pro. Right? The new architecture is going to make it a hell of a lot faster this year. But point being is that even if you were a one-man band, or you could probably move a lot of your work to Premiere Pro, get that out of the way, and get back into After Effects where there's a compelling reason to do so. Right? Where you needed more sophistication than Premiere Pro could offer, basically. So that prompted this product, basically. And a lot of the reasons that we did things we did is because we knew that you could offload a lot of the work. Like there's this simple DVE type stuff. Do you really need After Effects to do that? No, not in our opinion. Not when we can do it programmatically here and at this speed, right?
Right.
So just so you understand, Chuck, a yellow line in Premiere Pro means no render time. So anything we create, you will never, if it goes to red, it means it needs a render. So you see that in the timeline here?
Right.
Okay, so we don't require render. So I can actually run this. Here, I'll create an in and out point, and I'll play it back for you. Out and loop it. And hopefully the audio is not too, actually, you know what? I'll disable the audio. Audio track, mute. There we go. Okay. So yeah, you'll see this play beautifully in real time. I didn't keyframe anything, right? So that little logo will stay static, but you get the idea, right? So that there was a lot of effort put into that because, you know, again, I go back to speed is one of the best features that you can give a creative individual because they can iterate, they get instant feedback, they can adapt, they can jam, if you will, right? Based on that. So that's the reason why we did a lot of extra little work that maybe other competitors did not do. We actually went that extra mile, and we do that in almost every product whenever we can. So I'm just so to be clear, whether you're using a logo, whether you're using text, I could build a title for you right here in Premiere Pro or import text. It's the same tool you'd be using. Or if you want to do like a picture-in-picture with a regular footage, you can actually insert it in here, apply the same tool, it would do the same thing. Exactly the same thing for you, okay? So I'm going to delete that for a second, and I think what I'd like to do is move on to some of the other tools. So we introduced the blur. There's basically all the post effects have to be pretty much done. Not all of them, but quite a few have to be done because everything that we know in Premiere Pro and even in Final Cut Pro, by the way, and Avid for that matter, and Resolve, most of the filters are created for rectilinear space. So rectilinear to me means flat, right? So 16:9 flat footage. So a good example and one of the filters that we did for storytelling purposes and for technical reasons is a blur, and I'll show you that in action. So why a blur for narrative? Well, out of focus, in focus, it helps you tell the story, right? The other part is, and I'll show you what the net results of linear filters versus spherical or 360, the net benefit of a spherical or a 360 filter, okay? So what I'll do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna grab the Gaussian blur that ships with Premiere Pro, okay? So we'll grab that and we'll just throw it right on this asset, and we'll go ahead and we'll crank that value up to, let's say, like a 200, okay? So that's pretty and all, but notice what's happening at the edges. I don't know if you can see it in your rendition, but you get a vignetting type of effect, right? So now, if I go and look at this asset in context, I don't know if you can see it, but you see this line?
Oh, actually, yeah.
Okay, so we'll try to scrub to another place maybe that it gets even worse. Here, let me just pull this out of the way and get our player back in focus. Okay, there we go. So a lot more distinct here, right?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, so that's the result of transitions and post effects that are built for linear flat cinema versus spherical or 360 medium, right? So if I go back into our Gaussian blur setting, you know, even I at first said, well, repeat edge pixels should resolve this. And I clicked that, and then I looked at the screen, and the edges looked clean on the left. But then again, when I look in context, you could still see it doesn't quite resolve it, right? I'm still getting that seam line. Right. See that? And it pinches at the top. Remember that pinching effect that we had with that logo? It'll do the same thing at the zenith and the nadir, or the north and the south pole. You can see that pinching effect happening over here, right?
Now, is that caused by the stitching of the 360 video?
No, the stitching is actually beautifully resolved here, right?
Okay.
It's a post operation that basically is not 360 or spherical in nature. It's built for flat cinema.
Oh, okay.
So that's why, when we were looking, remember title safes and action safes and all that, before LEDs and modern day flat plasmas and all that, we didn't even see the whole of the image that we were producing. So, nobody really cared what was happening at the edges, Chuck. Right?
Yeah.
Now it's extremely important.
Okay.
Right? So we compensate for that, basically. So I'm just going to leave it at exactly the same view on this side with our window so that I can show you how our products resolve that. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the Gaussian blur that ships with Premiere Pro, and I'm going to go ahead and use our blur. So same as any other effect, drag and drop. You open up some values, mono or stereo, right? So we support both monoscopic and stereoscopic 360. We'll leave it at mono in this case. This is a mono source. And then what we'll do is I'll key in exactly the same value. So now notice right off the bat, we're not getting that vignetting on the edges, right? Without that repeat edge pixel feature that we had in the Gaussian blur. And remember, this is exactly the same point of view where we had that seam happen. You're never going to see a seam with us because it is built for spherical. It is not built for flat. I mean, you could still use it on flat, but the reality is that it's really built for spherical. So we did a blur, we did a glow, a very beautiful glow, by the way, and the blur is not compromised. It's a true horizontal, vertical Gaussian blur. We just put extra effort that it runs as fast as possible on these GPUs, right? So we did a blur, we did a glow, we did some of those shut up moments that I told you about before. I would show people the denoiser or the sharpening tool, and that I would get the shut up right there because people were more than happy to pay for the sharpen or the denoise, especially at the price that we were selling, just for that feature. Everything else was a bonus to them. So why denoise and sharpen? Because noise is a problem with a lot of these security camera sensors and GoPros and Thetas and Gear VR. They just don't have the capacity or wherewithal to be able to process an image or acquire an image properly. So as a result of that, there's a lot of noise. So the denoiser helps tremendously because the other thing is that you can't really light for most 360 shoots. It's cumbersome it's not impossible, but if you're thinking more journalistic uses, right, you can't set up light rigs. You don't have the time nor the budget. You have to work with available light. So now that's compounded with, as I said, these tinny little sensors that are not really built for low light conditions. So the denoiser was like a godsend for people, because all of a sudden they're just getting a better image than they would otherwise. The sharpening was your best friend because compression, one way or another, is something that we have to live with. So now if you can imagine, you've got a sensor that's not really in a camera that's not really built to do what you want it to do. In other words, get a pristine image. Then you put it through a stitching package, which is processing. In one way or another, you're processing that data. So you've got a compromised image. Anytime you process, you compromise the footage. Then you throw it into Premiere Pro, and maybe you throw our tools on it. And as careful as we try to be with those pixels, Chuck, we're still processing. And that's not the end of the story. Now you've got to go through compression, right? So you put on your wizard's hat of compression and get to learn this black art, and you manage to pull out this wonderful MP4 that you're ready to upload to YouTube, and you figure, well, everything's great. This is it. This is the end of of that pipeline, right? Well, guess what? That's not it. That's not the case. When you upload an asset to YouTube or Facebook, they take it and recompress it. They tear it apart, pull it back together in another format, and recompress it to serve their purposes. They've got massive deployment on their hand. They've got incredible amounts of data to move. So you're recompressing a compressed asset. All this to say is that a little sharpening before you compress goes a long way. So this is where I'd get that shut up moment. As soon as they see the sharpener applied to their footage, it was just like magic to them. So yeah, there you go. So a byproduct of all this is what we started to see with a lot of the people once we shipped this, is that people were actually starting to use the blur and the glow as a transitional element on an adjustment layer, right? So that they started to mimic kind of like the light leak effect for transitions. So seeing this, and then seeing some of the madness that people were trying to do with transitions in After Effects for 360, it's a complicated process because you still have all this edge problems to deal with, right? And trying not to cause these seams. So you have to be a bit of a power user and motivated to put together manual transitions in After Effects. So I'm seeing this, Chuck, in my travels, both virtual and physical, and I'm saying, I know we can solve this programmatically. There's no real reason for these people to be killing themselves trying to do this. So that's a great foray into our next product, which is video transitions. So if I may, I'll go ahead and show you a couple of those.
Absolutely.
So what we'll do is I'm just going to build a scenario where we can cut maybe from two very disparate scenes. Okay. So actually, let's stop here for a second. So the piece that you're seeing right now, I've shown this around the world because it's an excellent example of our After Effects product being used with CG. So these tires that you see, I don't know if you can make it out. I'll actually increase the screen for you here. I'm trying to get you a little more. There we go. So this is a Bridgestone spot. Bridgestone, the tire, of course. So what happens here is that this young lady's out in the middle of nowhere, and it rains tires, right? So this is not something you're going to try to do practically. You need CG for that. In this case, it's Cinema 4D. So this project actually it was a great case study for branded content for many reasons. One of them is you're using everything that we know in cinematic, film production, and you're making it happen in 360, and we can take much of the credit for that because we just facilitated everything in After Effects. You just keep working the way you work, you know how to work in After Effects, and we take care of all this 360 madness for you behind the scenes. So you can easily pool your talents from flat cinema into 360 and keep working and telling your stories the way you want to tell them. So the other thing that there was a sort of a very pleasant byproduct, I don't know what to call it really, but another benefit of all of this is that I would show this piece to people because you get this wow moment with these tires, right? Especially when you're watching an HMD and you see these tires, sort of raining all over you, and you've got this whole story being told to you. But I guess what I'm trying to get at, Chuck, is that I would have people watch this to get their first, the first taste of branded content in a Gear VR or an HMD. And what would happen is that they would watch this whole thing, and two things would happen. One of them would be is they would ask me, "Can I see this again?" Which is unbelievable. Now, the second thing that would happen is after a while, I started to ask the people that were watching this, how long was this piece that you just saw? And they would say, wow, that was a 60-second piece. I don't know, maybe 90 seconds at most. Chuck, this piece is almost 4 minutes long. So from an advertiser's perspective, right? Somebody's living with your brand for 4 minutes and they want to see it again. That's unbelievable. So there we go back to this, how powerful this medium can be. Right?
Yeah, it was that captivating that.
Yeah. So some advertisers out there are using this incredibly well for themselves, right? Much like our friends at Fugitives Creative, who are using it for social change very, very well. So anyway, I'll stop waxing philosophically here. So let's get to a point where we can just cut this clip and let's look at transitions together. How's that?
Okay.
So maybe right before the tires right about there. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim this here, and then maybe find another point. Where was there? Young lady in the car. There, that's a good point. Okay, so I'll just trim that there. Delete that. Tuck that right in. Boom. And let's create an in and out point here. And let's add transitions. So we've got, say, 2 scenes here, right? We've got clip A, clip B, and we'll transition between here and there. Cool.
Okay.
So let's not do it with our tools. Let's do it with tools that ship with Premiere Pro so that we can see the fundamental problem here, okay? So the one that I like to use a lot during my demonstrations is the iris swipe, because it shows the problem very, very well, okay? So I'll use an iris round, and I'll just drag and drop that in, and let's just zoom in and focus in that area. Not to brag, but notice that red thing that we were talking about before? That's not ours. Yeah, so that's not us. You won't see that with us. So the iris round, let's extend that transition. The idea is basically is that you're going, it's like a portal, right, from one clip to the next. So notice how, oops, we've got a little bit of a jump, but it doesn't matter. Notice how that circle stays circular in the equirectangular space, right?
Right.
Let's look at that in context now. You see what, it's pinching one more time, right? It's that same phenomenon of pinching. So, you know, here we are motivated for technical reasons. We want to keep our user base happy. We want to make things faster for them. But then there's a marvelous opportunity that presents itself too, Chuck, in that we realize that, and this was very exciting, by the way, as a content creator and a tool developer for this medium, is that you realize that there's great opportunity now to reinvent a lot of these tool sets, including transitions, right? And sort of conform not only for technical reasons, but for narrative reasons to the medium. So I'll tell you I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. I'm just going to obliterate this iris wipe or this iris round effect, and I'm going to go to ours, and I'll show you the equivalent in our world. Okay, so we've got an iris swipe, and here I'll show you where an iris swipe for flat leaves off and where we pick up, not only for technical, but for also for narrative purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and I'm actually, you see we've got a bit of a feather. And the reason why we introduced the feather is things tend to be a lot more abrupt in spherical or in 360 than they are in flat. You're at a distance with flat. Spherical's right in your face. So the notion of feathering things off, right, just helps with that abruptness. So we have a full feather control on there, but let's kill that for a second. And let's just watch this transition happen, right, over time. And notice that we don't stay circular. We actually do that compensation, right? So let's just go to the extreme. Let's go right there. This looks squarish, right? But if we look at it in context, it's perfectly circular. No matter where I go in that asset, it doesn't, that gnarling doesn't happen. Nothing happens. That pinching, nothing. It's always circular. Cool.
So the message I guess that I'm getting here is that as great as the effects and the transitions and all that ship with Premiere, just like with Final Cut, they just aren't built for a 360 world.
No, they're not.
Because of some of the issues that the pinching and the wrapping into the spheres. Yeah. And it requires.
It's the same for all NLEs, Chuck. It's not exclusive to the Apple products or the Adobe products. It's the same with Avid. It's the same with Resolve. I'm sure a lot of that will be rectified in the next, I guess, 6, 9 to 12 months, because there's a lot of momentum in this medium, right? So, we're sort of paving the way and showing people things, and I'm hoping people come back with even better solutions than we do, because that'll just prompt us to do that much better, right? So yeah, there's definitely technical reasons, but I think what even more importantly, at least to us, is that there's narrative opportunities as well. So what do I mean by that? You do understand that you kind of lose control of where people are looking with 360 spherical, right? This medium, this 360 medium. You don't really know if somebody's going to be looking down at their toes, up at the sky, left, right. So how do you, as a storyteller, help get that person looking at the spot that you want them to look so that the cut works well, or that your transition resolves properly, right? So if you've got time and budget and you live in Hollywood or Bollywood, or in TV land, right, HBO, etc., you can certainly use blocking techniques, right, to have action work at a certain way so that you're guiding that gaze, right, with just action and blocking that you're doing. But in many cases, you don't have that luxury. You may be in a journalistic environment where you need to just react and work and shoot and just work with what you have, right? In that case, I think your best friend is spatial audio cues, right? So if I wanted somebody to look at this girl during a cut or a transition, I may spatially place some audio here and just sort of guide the user to look that way. So that's a wonderful little trick. But another, maybe just as powerful tool, is if we can actually guide the gaze during the transition.
Okay.
Right? So all our tools, I'm just going to soften it up so it's not that harsh, right? But I can actually help guide that gaze so that I resolve properly in the most subtlest of ways. I don't have to do this abruptly. I can do it slowly over time, but I'm going to be assured that either my cut or my transition works well, basically.
So
this is very exciting
So we've got some new considerations. I think you just hit it, that's one of the big, not concerns, but challenges of the 360 is that up to this point, we've been able to control what the viewer is looking at because
Correct.
They have to look at what we want them to see. Now,
Correct.
They may be checking out what's in the back seat or the dashboard or something. So
absolutely, So anything that we can do to help in the process, right? And this is why it was so exciting from a content creator and a tool developer standpoint, is that we have to rethink a lot of everything. Remember what I said before? I know nothing, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Even after decades in the industry, this is incredible. Chuck, I felt like a 21-year-old again.
I can see why. I can see why.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Chris, I think my head just exploded because not only did you show me some of the technical parts and why I need the tools, but you also gave me a lot to think about when it comes to the use, how to use 360, and maybe some of the if I'm going to use it, some of the what's the word I want, techniques or tools that I need to wrap my head around and learn to think about. Whereas before it was just transitions or zooms or something like that. But now we've got a whole new world to work in, which is not, as you said, it's not a bad thing. It's very exciting, but it just presents lots of new challenges.
I think it's invigorating. It's incredibly challenging and exciting, Chuck. And I mean, if I may, this is incredible because there are no rules. It's you and I and anybody else that's interested that are going to create these rules, right? So that's unbelievable to me. I mean, one of the best books I never read, how's that, is something I did a design degree after a business degree. And when I graduated, I came across this book that said, forget every rule you ever learned in design, including the ones you read in this book. I didn't open and read one page. The title spoke volumes to me. And I think this is indicative of this industry, or rather this medium. There are no rules. This is the time to make mistakes and make huge mistakes and just learn from them and move on and retain what you want. It's very, very exciting. I feel like much like we're back in the Lumiere brother days, right? So.
Well, and we all go through this. And the idea, I mean, the classic example that we use, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. When we first got fonts, well, we'll use all of them in one document, and we all got over that. But it's a phase you have to go through and learn. So I think we're going to be the same thing here. They're going to be effects and all sorts of things that are going to be, we have to include that just because we can.
Absolutely.
And we'll figure it out eventually. But
no doubt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our roadmap moving forward is certainly a lot of practical tools, but we're going to have a lot of fun with stylization too. You'll see a lot of that come out by NAB, at the very latest by SIGGRAPH. But again, from a developer standpoint and from a content creator standpoint, this is fun. This is actually fun to be able to have this opportunity to be able to create new tools, right, that fit this medium that well. So
now that I've seen some of what you're doing, I can kind of understand why you made the decision that we talked about earlier in the show to just go 100% in this direction, because this is virgin snow, and it would be terribly tempting to be right there and not stick your foot in it.
Well, the other thing is I mean, knowing the market the way we do, right, and having been through this, Chuck, we could have charged what we wanted for the tool set, but we thought, that would just have the medium go the way of stereo 3D, where it's too expensive, too difficult to create for the medium. I think I love the notion, not because it's us, but I love the notion of the artist taking decisions on the tools, right? I think it's important. And nothing against engineers. I love them. We work with them all the time. My son actually is an engineer. It's just that you need to make a lot of these decisions from the trenches. You need to have actually worked in production and understand what that really means and why, you make certain decisions as an end user, right? So I think we've managed to find a very, very good balance between, the artist and the engineer, the business person and the engineer and the artist. And it's not always easy to get those three worlds talking and talking well. Yeah.
Well, we have to ask the practical questions here of what kind of pricing is there for these tools, and are there any special hardware requirements to run them other than just Premiere?
Sure. So the best deal bar none on our website right now is what we call the Mettle Skybox suite. And what that is it's a pre-bundled package of all the 360 products that we have right now for After Effects and Premiere Pro. So you've got 2 sets of transitions. We only saw one of many, by the way, that I just showed you today. You've got the After Effects package, you've got Post Effects, and you've got the editing tools for Premiere Pro, including the VR player, and that's $499 US. If you buy them individually, they're as low as $149 per package, or $189 and $229. So there's 3 different price points, and it's spread across this. But bar none, the suite is the best deal. Okay. And if you compare that to some of our competitors out there, we're less than half the price of one competitor, and we're offering, I think, more than double the amount of tools just in that price point. If we look at, I call it indirect competition in Nuke's Kara. You're familiar with Nuke, right? That's a $14,000 price a seat. And then you've got maintenance fees. So I think we're sticking to our guns. We want to democratize this. We could have charged what we wanted. We decided that we like the medium. We want it to survive and thrive, and we want to empower the little shops, the little guy. They'll react quickly. They'll create great content. And you know what? The big guys always follow. They always do. And their consumption patterns are very, very different from the indie out there or from the small shop. A bigger shop can't buy a single license. They have to equip every single station. Right? So that's what I mean by the consumption patterns of the bigger shops, right? But you also, as a business person, if you really believe in the medium, you can't wait for the bigger shops to move this medium forward. It's going to be the indies. It's going to be the smaller shops that are just much more agile, right? A lot more nimble and motivated. So, I mean, nothing against the big shops. Processes are processes. Bigger companies take longer to move, and there's good reason for that. But we sort of bet on the small guy.
I think it's a good bet. I think it's a good bet, and I'm looking forward to spending a little more time in your blog and digging around some of that and understanding this even more.
You'll meet some wonderful people there, called our customers, by the way.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people.
So the website is Mettle, and that's METTLE.com.
Yes.
I want to make sure we get that right. Chris, I don't even know what to say because I now I need to step back and process some of this because, again, every time I encounter someone that's working in 3D, I feel like the haze clears just a little bit, and I understand more about how I would do it, but also maybe what I could use it for. And that's, as you said, it's exciting.
Absolutely. So I think the easiest thing is just download a demo, whether it's our products or competitors' products. It doesn't matter to me. To me, if as I said, I believe in the medium. I need for people to just create great stories, and let's see if we can create that big blockbuster. Like, let's see if one of us can get that I don't know what to call it, that one Oscar winner or whatever it is that they're going to call it in 360, because then that'll just assure that the medium moves forward, right? At the end of the day, that's got to happen this year. There's got to be better monetization, and there's got to be even bigger successes than we've seen in 2016.
Chris, I really appreciate all the time. Thank you so much for shedding a little bit of light on this and showing us what we might be able to do if we just take the time and get the right tools.
I hope you have fun.
I hope you continue to have the success you've had.
Thank you, Chuck.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I know this show's gone on a little longer than normal, but I think this stuff is fascinating if you're into it. And if not, it's going to be coming to a screen near you, or maybe a headgear near you soon. So the sooner you start to appreciate it, the better off you'll be. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.